like the jurors, I knew nothing about trenching operations or anything like that before we started working on this case. And, I'm sure all the lawyers know out there and have experienced this. When you have a case, you have to learn basically everything about what you're going to present to the jury. I mean, you need to be a master of the information. But then once you're a master of the information, you've mastered it so well that sometimes it's hard to put it back into regular terms and regular words for people who've never heard this information before to understand. So the purpose of the boards is to make your expert speak English and slow down and give authority to everything that they say. A lot of experts want to say, well, based on my training, education, experience, this is why this is the way they should do it, or this is why this is negligence, or whatever you're trying to get out of them. But jurors don't just believe an expert because they say that they're an expert. I mean,
on the contrary, I think jurors have trouble with believing people who are paid money to talk.
Yeah.
And as they should. And so one thing is everything our expert said had authority behind it. And we learned this from Rodney Jew and Amy Gallagher Hall, that on the lower right-hand corner. And so they started, we point it out and then they start seeing it. We put where it came from. So we'd have a picture of the publication or document that it comes from. We'd have the quote that we wanted, our spin on it. And then we'd have where it came from for every little bitty piece of information. And it forces the expert to do piece by piece so the jury has time to do it. If they're wandering off from listening to him, they can read it themselves. But also shows them that, hey, we're not just saying this. This is a legitimate authority, which the other side didn't have.
Right. And so we did it for all the regulations that we wanted to talk about, because there's a lot of regulations in trenching operations. Regulations, they read weird. I mean, they're weird. They're hard to understand. And especially if you don't know anything about trenches, when you read them, it just sort of goes over your head. And so really breaking them down and giving the jury space to read them themselves, hear the expert explain what they are, go back and read it. I mean, it took forever. I mean, it took a long time to get through some really basic information, but having that basic foundation of knowledge, I think, really helped us build our case the way that we wanted.
And I think the first thing, we had to talk about is, what is OSHA? Why do we have OSHA there? This because people were getting killed. You have to protect people. And then, and this is what we have rules, and these are mandatory rules. They have to be followed. They're not options. And bad things happen. People are injured or killed, but they don't follow the rules. Then we had to go into what trenching was and why it was dangerous, and then have authority for that. And then, I don't want to have this big, long regulation. And so, and we didn't make this up. We got it from an OSHA poster. But we said you have to do the 3 S's. You have to either what's called sloping, which is where you have a gentle slope instead of a straight up and down wall of the trench. Shielding, which is using a trench box, or shoring, which is having an engineer come out and design a system to keep the trench from collapsing. But you have to do one of those 3, and those are the only 3 things you can do. And so if you don't follow the 3 S's, then you endanger the lives of what we came up with, you're gambling with the lives of your employees if you don't follow the 3 S's. If you do, then you're protecting them from being killed by cave-ins. And, I think that simplifying it made it so much easier. And, you can remember the 3 S's really easy.
I will say that for people listening, this strategy isn't something that you can come up with the night before and it will work. We actually worked on this I've been working on it for over a year, the visual aspect of it. We worked for days with our expert to come up with a plan for what order we're presenting things in so that it made sense, and we're building the blocks, we're building the tower of evidence, but how the expert should present it, where to stand, where to point, how to talk about it. All of those things have to be practiced, and it's not something that comes naturally, especially to expert witnesses who aren't used to doing testimony that way.
And he wasn't comfortable with it, and I love him, but he's a soft-spoken, not particularly dynamic speaker, very credible person, I think, and very knowledgeable. But I think, we got this allowed him to get off the witness stand, be more teachery, and I don't think he would have presented as well had we not had all these visuals. But it was a lot of, and even after we'd printed up, we found things that we needed to change.
Yeah. When
we went through them. And the other thing we found is that, like we had 100, and you think, I want to prove this one little point and this little, and then you find that some of your posters are repetitive.
Right.
And so some of them we'd already planned on using, and some of them I made a game time decision because I could tell that the majority already got it. And if I had used that next poster, that I was going to start losing them. And just by just watching body language, eye contact with people as to whether or not they're getting it, I skipped some posters once we got in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what's the cool thing about the posters is the problem with like a PowerPoint is that it's harder to make those little decisions. Like you're skipping past stuff and then you're lost and you can't. Whereas the posters, you just look at it and you say, I'm not ready for this one. Go to the next one or whatever. And you're right in the jury's face. So you can see if they're getting it, if they're reading it, if they're on the same page, if you need to go back, if they're lost, you can go back, you can keep referring back to things easily. So that's kind of why we liked the printed posters in that scenario better than the PowerPoint. It's a little easier to go back and forth.
Yeah, we used the computer to present documents and photos. And I did do some PowerPoint for my closing.
Right. And it made sense there.
To present. But that was more because I was going through, some evidence, if they say this, look at the I'm taking notes. So if they say X, look at exhibit, I put it up, exhibit 3 on page 5, it says this. In exhibit 8 on page 2, it says this. Write this down. So if they say this is how you argue back, and that's where you can look. Because I knew that they were going to try to confuse them on a couple of issues that I knew that we were right. But yeah, I'm glad we used the posters, but it took 2 sessions, multi-hour sessions with our expert to get him somewhat comfortable with doing that. And then it also, we also had to make sure we had them ordered, we had them in the right order so that we weren't digging for stuff in trial. So we had to put them someplace easy to reach in the right order. Stacks that weren't too big, but not too small. I mean, it was just practice. That's all I can tell you.
It was. It took a lot of practice. It's not something that just materializes overnight. The other really cool thing that happened with the boards, which I just loved because I made a lot of the boards, and so I really loved them. But is that if the jury wanted you to move out of the way so they could see the boards, so they could make sure they understood it, they would just ask in the middle of, they would say, I can't see that, or can you move a little bit over? And I thought that meant they were really connecting with the method.
Yeah.
They were getting it. They were understanding why it was important, what they needed to look at, and they cared about looking at it. So,
and I felt they felt comfortable enough to. I mean, it doesn't happen in most trials, but actually speak up. Say, I didn't get that. Can you hold it differently? Can you get out of the way so I can see better? Can you ask someone else to get out of the way so we can see better?
Right.
It was nice because you felt like you're building your team.